Hey, I'm Allison. I am a literacy specialist and I have a blog called Learning at the Primary Pond. And this past weekend, I put up a post about how to support primary students who struggle to work independently. And hopefully it was a timely post for you. I know a lot of us are kind of like winding down this semester before the holiday break, and things are maybe getting a little bit crazy, hopefully not. But I wanted to share with you tonight or this afternoon the things that I do when I find that I have a couple of students who are not working independently successfully. And the examples that I'm going to use are going to be from literacy centers because I am a literacy specialist, but I honestly feel like these can be applied to any independent work time, whether it's, math centers or writing workshop, whatever it is. These are things that I do during any part of the day. Literacy centers is just what comes to mind first because, again, I am a literacy specialist. If you are joining us, I would love it if you'd share maybe where you teach, what grade you teach, and also if this is a challenge that you face as well, because I know a lot of us do. So first things first, the key to solving the problem first is recognizing that you have a problem. And sometimes for me, it's like very obvious where I have one kid that I notice I'm constantly like, sit down, do this, whatever, not on task. Sometimes it's very obvious, but sometimes it's not obvious. And a lot of times I find that I'll be driving home from work and I'll be like, hey, so-and-so, I had to remind them to get back on task 7 times this week or something. So for me, sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes it's very externalizing behaviors where the kids are being loud or bothering each other, but sometimes it's just kind of like a child is sitting there and not doing anything, which is less disruptive, but not any better than, a child who is disturbing others, other than I guess that they don't bother the other kids. But anyway, I kind of try to keep a watch for both types of behaviors, whether they're very obvious or not obvious that the child just isn't working independently. So once I'm aware that I have a problem, then I try to figure out what might be causing it. And sometimes it's as simple as the independent work skills just aren't developed enough yet, right? That's something the kids have to learn, just like their ABCs or how to read, that's a skill too. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes it may be that the work is too easy or too difficult for the child, and I need to adjust accordingly. Sometimes it's that the child doesn't know what they're supposed to do, and so goofing off is just sort of a natural consequence of them not really knowing what they're supposed to be working on. And that could be, my fault where I'm not teaching it well enough, or if all the other kids are good to go, then it might just be a situation where that child needs a little one-on-one support with remembering what to do, or maybe they need a little visual, something along those lines. Another possible cause of the being off task is that the child is seeking attention. It could be attention from me, that when I'm, getting up from my group to remind them or redirect them, that could actually be something positive for them because they want that adult they want that adult attention from me, whether it's positive or negative, they're just trying to get it. Similarly, they could be looking for attention from their peers. That's another option too. Another reason why the child might be off task is that sitting still is just a challenge for them, right? We're asking little people to sometimes sit for long periods of time, hopefully not too long, but even just 15 or 10 minutes, it might be too much for some kids. Or, maybe they're having trouble focusing for an extended period of time, and that's why they're not working independently. So all of those things, and I'm sure there's more, please feel free to contribute more if you think of more, but all of those things could be causing the off-task behavior. So I kind of try to figure out what's causing it. And then once I think I know what's causing it, then I'll try something, right? It's kind of like a scientific experiment. I have a hypothesis and I'm testing whatever, a possible solution. So I mentioned the difficulty level might be off. So maybe I differentiate that center or multiple centers for the child. Maybe that child needs more support with knowing how to do the activities. Then I could do a one-on-one or a small group kind of intervention that's not necessarily academic, but it's more like procedures, routines, expectations. That's an option. If they're wanting attention, as much as I wish that I could, have a magic wand and make them not want attention, probably I'm not going to be able to change that. So in that case, I try to teach the child Here's how you can get attention from me. Here's when you can get attention from me. Hey, do you want to be my special helper? Do you want to have lunch with me? Just other ways to give that child attention and be very clear. This is how you get my attention, and this is not how you get my attention. And kind of monitor my behavior going forward, because if I realize it's an attention-getting thing, whatever they're doing, the off-task behavior, then if it's not dangerous behavior, I might just kind of want to let it go, because once they see that I'm not giving them attention, as long as they're not harming other kids or making a huge ruckus, I might just want to ignore it so that they see that that's not how to get attention, but also supplement that with teaching them, here's how you do get my attention. Same thing kind of goes with them wanting attention from the other kids. Maybe you can make them a group leader. Maybe that will give them the attention that they want. And when they're in that position to be, providing directions and reminders for other kids, maybe they'll be more likely to be on task too. That's another option. And then I also mentioned issues like it's just too long for the child to sit or do one activity or focus or whatever. So if that's the case, then I might do something like set a timer for them, and then when it goes off, they can get a drink, take a break, stretch. Maybe they do the whole center standing up, even if it's not traditionally a standing up center. That can help too. So those are all possible solutions based upon what I figure out about what the child, or why the behavior, the off-task behavior might be happening. If you're joining us just now, I know some people are coming in. Welcome. We are talking about how to support primary kiddos who are struggling to work independently. And the first thing I mentioned was try to figure out what is causing the behavior, and then try something that takes into account what you think the cause is. We just finished talking about that. The next suggestion I have is to track your students' behavior, or have them track their own behavior. And I've worked in several schools where we have done PBIS. I think it's Positive Behavior Intervention System. And so with that, kids who are struggling with, maybe staying on task or following directions, they can have this sheet called a check-in, check-out sheet, where they, throughout the day, they will, me as the teacher, I will show them and talk with them about how they're doing. How did you do during reading? How did you do during math? And we'll fill it out. Now, if this particular child that's having trouble working independently doesn't need a whole day's chart, then consider doing something like this little half sheet. I will link to this in a comment or the post after we're done here, but I have this for free for you. And basically, the child is just self-assessing, and you can help with that self-assessment, how they did with their independent work that particular day, and then they write a little bit about it, so that, or you can write about it, maybe it's going home, but whatever you do with this sheet, I would track it. So set a goal with the child. Maybe if they have 4 smiley faces in a week, then that means that they get to have lunch with you, or they get to be a special leader. I don't do a ton of prize box and candy. I don't do a ton of those rewards. I'm not opposed to them or anything, but it's just not my style. I really try to encourage intrinsic motivation so that the kids, are seeing for themselves. When they get a smiley face, I'm telling them, hey, aren't you proud of yourself? Look at this amazing work that you did. Look at all you got done today. I'm really trying to get them to find joy in their own, good behavior or good learning or whatever happened, as opposed to it just being external rewards. I'm not saying that sometimes external rewards can't be helpful, because they can, but generally speaking, that's my preference. So just to sum up, if I've tried, maybe a couple different things, I think I know what's causing the behavior, but it's still not working, then I would do one of these sheets. And before centers or whatever starts, the child comes to me, I give them the sheet, I say, hey, during centers today, remember to fill in the blank. They work in centers or whatever the independent work activity is. They come to me afterward, we fill it out together, either I or they write something, and then again, I record it because we're working toward a goal, 4 smiley faces in a week or something like that. So that is one option for your kiddos who are having a little bit of extra trouble. This is obviously not something that you can do with half your kids, because that would take too long, but that is one intervention that you can try. And then the last thing that I mentioned in the post on Saturday was that if you have tried different strategies, if you've maybe been using these sheets and the child just isn't meeting their goal, And maybe this is an extreme case where the child is hurting other kids or being so disruptive that no one in their group can do their work or no one in the class can do their work. I'm talking an extreme situation, and I have had this a couple of different years where, in kindergarten, both years, one child just wasn't ready to work independently, and it was not only affecting that child, but it was affecting the whole class. Obviously, that's a tricky situation. And my first line of defense is to see if I can get an aide for like part of the day to support, see if, maybe if it's not too extreme of a situation, maybe there's a parent volunteer that would like to come in and just kind of help keep the class on task. That's helpful too. But if all else fails and I have a child who really is not able to work independently, then I just kind of recognize that and say, okay, so-and-so is just not ready for this. This is something we need to work on. And so I'll talk to the child and I'll say, we've been working so hard to help you fill in the blank, whatever it is, keep your hands to yourself or get your work done. And we're not ready for that. So unfortunately, for a little bit of time, you're going to have to sit with me during centers. You're not going to be able to be with your group working in the classroom. And so I'll explain it, this is why, this is what we're working toward. But then during centers time or independent work, I will have, I'll have my guided reading group or my small group, and I'll have that child sit kind of, I'm looking down, but down by the table near me, facing away from the group so that it's not like an attention getting situation, but I'll just have them do their work with me. Now, this is obviously an extreme case. I don't like to isolate kids, and I don't want to keep them isolated for very long, but I just explained to the child, you're not ready yet. Again, this would be like a very destructive sort of behavior, maybe dangerous behavior, and I don't have an aide to help. Just explain that, you're not ready yet, and we're going to work toward this, and I want to see that you are on task and doing what you're supposed to be doing while you're sitting here, down on the floor near the table, and then we'll try it again. So again, that's kind of an extreme situation, not something that I do very often or like to do, but if there's like no other recourse, then know that you do have that option, because in a way, independent work is a privilege, right? The kids have to earn it. They have to be able to work independently in order to do that. And most of them really do want to work independently with their peers. So it can be a little bit of a motivator to get back in there and do the right thing if they've been removed from the group. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to chat about, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Again, just to review, we were talking about different things that we can do if our kids are struggling to work independently, whether it's in centers or writing workshop or whatever. The first thing I mentioned was look for possible causes of behavior and try strategies that make sense for that, whatever the cause is that you think. The second thing I mentioned was this, and I'm going to put the link to this. It's in my free Literacy Centers Toolkit, and I will put that in the post for you to track their behavior and set goals. And then the third thing I mentioned for extreme situations is just to take away independent work opportunities for a limited time, have them work next to you for the safety and the well-being of the other kids if it comes to that. So I'd love to hear your ideas. Again, I will put this link so you can get it in the post. And I'll come back and answer questions and answer your comments later, so feel free to comment after the fact. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.